Mount Everest. Standing at 8,850 meters, the mountain has stirred the imagination and courage of man for centuries. Hundreds have died trying to climb to its summit, and now a city slicker with a borrowed sleeping bag but a lot of heart is about to attempt to trek to its third base camp. This is the Everest Podcast.
And welcome to episode 15 of the Everest Podcast. My name is Erick, and I am broadcasting to you from the interim base camp on Everest. We're at 18,500 feet, and by interim base camp, that means we're actually just about halfway in between base camp 1 and base camp 2. And what a day it has been today. There's so much to share with you. Let me just begin by giving you the word of the day. In fact, today is more of a phrase of the day, but the phrase/word of the day is bad omens. Bad omens. You will soon see why. So, let me just begin by, I've already begun with the word of the day. Let me continue with giving you a sort of synopsis of highlights from the day. I woke up this morning without any improvements with my cold. My throat killed as much as it did yesterday. So you're going to hear me clearing my throat a fair bit during this podcast. We did find out for sure this morning that it is a viral infection that I have, not bacterial, so I can't take any antibiotics, unfortunately. I have to just sort of sit this one out and keep trekking as I try to fight off this virus. Probably not the best combination. In fact, it's probably not a wise idea to keep going, although I am, largely because the higher I go, the drier the air gets, and the worse my my throat condition will get as well. So we'll take it day by day. But as you will soon see, this may no longer be as big of a deal as I thought it was going to be this morning. So anyway, I woke up with still sort of the same cold. The good news was that I actually had a great night's rest. I slept for 8 hours straight, which was probably one of the best nights of sleep I've gotten ever since leaving the United States. Largely because I've been on Diamox since landing in Nepal, and Diamox is a diuretic and tends to make you get up every few hours at night to go to the bathroom. So it seems that my body is at least getting used to the Diamox, and was able to rest for a fair bit last night. Unfortunately, didn't do enough for my cold, but again, I guess the theme for this trip has been roll with the punches, and that's what we're doing. That's what I'm doing. So anyway, we started out this morning from Base Camp 1 for interim camp. Base Camp 1 sits at 17,700 feet. So we ascended 800 vertical feet today. And were it not for the altitude, the terrain itself actually wasn't too difficult. There were a few moments where the path did sort of just altogether disappear. But again, with your sights set on a goal, and with this case, the foot of a mountain, a sort of snow-capped mountain further down the trail, you're able to press on. For about almost an hour and a half of our trek took us through what I have unofficially called now the Valley of the Rock Falls, or Rockfall Valley. And basically it's this low valley where you're flanked on both sides by these very steep walls of very loose rock, and every couple of minutes or so, you can hear these huge rock slides, and you just hope that nothing comes close enough to hit you. Fortunately, the quote-unquote trail doesn't take you too close to the sides of the valley, so you are generally safe, but the trail is pretty much over loose rock that came down with rock slides, so you're never quite sure. You just have to be careful and aware at all times. It sort of just goes with the terrain. Oh, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We actually had our first quote-unquote tragedy, if you will, this morning. Of our three group members, one of our group members has been sick for the last few days and just has not been feeling well enough to trek, and finally decided to turn around and head back to base camp. So our fearsome threesome is now fearsome twosome, and with him went our Tibetan guide as well to help sort of escort him safely down from base camp 1 back to base camp, and ultimately down to lower altitudes where he can recuperate and recover. So we've already lost 2 of our crew, but we're actually going to lose more people through the course of the day, and I'll get to that in a moment. So anyway, bad omens, right? So that's our first sort of really bad omen, losing a member of our group, and then losing our guide as well. We've sort of gone through the Rockfall Valley. Pretty much the whole trail is a pretty steep ascent. It takes us 3 hours and 45 minutes to get from base camp 1 to interim base camp. So again, 800 vertical feet, but it's really the altitude that determines just how fast or how slow you go on this kind of terrain. But pretty decent time, at least in my opinion, for me. I took frequent breaks. I took things very slowly, largely because of all these bad omens. I just thought, look, it's not worth it to rush. This is not a contest. And all along the trail, bad omens kept coming. So our second bad omen was this yak. We have 4 yaks. One of them just kept tossing its load over and over again. The 2 yakmen that we have in our group had to keep rebinding all the pack that was on the yak, retying it up, and this happened I think 2 or 3 times where the yak would just toss the load again. So not a good sign there. But then the really, really bad omen came, third bad omen came about halfway through the trek where one of our Sherpas just felt really, really sick. We have 2 Sherpas with us, one of whom is the cook, and the other is another just experienced Sherpa guide. He's the one who speaks English, and we sort of communicate through him. But our cook just all of a sudden felt very, very sick, and was vomiting, had to collapse on a rock and just sit and hold his head, and he was hacking up a lung, and it was just really bad. And immediately the other Sherpa said that the sick Sherpa had to return back to base camp. And so all of a sudden our group of 8 was now down to 5. And just to sort of tally up the numbers, the original 8 were the 3 trekkers, the 3 clients, if you will, includes me. The Tibetan guide makes 4, 2 Sherpas make 6, and then 2 yakmen. The 2 yakmen are pretty much people who live right up here in Rongpu. So if one of them goes down, then we know we're really in trouble. But honestly, when that Sherpa went down, I started getting pretty worried. I mean, when a Sherpa starts falling ill, you start getting pretty antsy. And you start really realizing just how difficult of a terrain, how difficult of a trek with this altitude, how difficult this trek really can be. So anyway, all these bad omens kept layering on, but that still wasn't the end of it, and you'll see why soon enough. But in just under 4 hours, we reached interim base camp. It's a beautiful sight, sort of sandwiched right in between this giant glacier. We're flanked on both sides by ice and these tall glacier seracs, these tall pinnacles of ice that sort of reach up to the sky. And a lot of these look kind of like an illustration out of a Dr. Seuss book. Kind of like a swirly like softy soft serve ice cream cone just stretching up to the sky. Really beautiful, especially in the sunlight where it's just glistening and really bright. So blessed with fantastic location. But this is also where we found out from our yakmen, one of our two yakmen, that we only have enough hay left for the yak for 2 days, rather than the 3 that our itinerary required. So we tried everything to salvage our itinerary. We tried rationing, seeing if we could ration the hay, but apparently that pisses off the yaks, and then they'll be even more antsy as they were today, and really try tossing loads and being really uncooperative, which we definitely didn't want. There was no way of sending someone back at this point to get more hay, so we were pretty much SOL. There was not much else we could do. So at this point, we were left to see what we could salvage with just 2 days left in our itinerary rather than 3. And this is a really big bummer. I mean, basically the takeaway from all this is that we can no longer reach Base Camp 3. Our original itinerary was to continue on to Base Camp 2 tomorrow, and then the following day to hike to Base Camp 3 as a day hike, and then return to Base Camp 2. And then the day after that, on the third day, in one full day, return back to Base Camp, all the way back down. I think it's about 15-20 miles or so. However, since we only have 2 days now, that prevents us from actually hitting Base Camp 3, nor do we want to rush things, since that's the best way to get yourself really sick with altitude sickness. So, I don't know what to say. It's really tough to take this in, because after all the preparation, time, effort that we've been putting into this trip over the last few weeks, just to salvage this trip initially, to think and to know now that our hopes and goals of trying to reach Base Camp 3 are now completely shattered thanks to a single bushel of hay. It's just hard to take. But, like I'm telling you, the whole theme of this trip, roll with the punches, right? So that's what we're going to have to do. Our alternate plan now is to wake up really early tomorrow. We're going to keep camp here, wake up early tomorrow, hike as far as we can tomorrow, hopefully past Base Camp 2, and then return to interim camp by the end of the day, and then the following day return to Base Camp. And that's the best we can do. So maybe we'll get as far as a quarter or a third of the way from Base Camp 2 to Base Camp 3. Hopefully we'll have some good views of Everest. That's why we came here in the first place. But again, it's a big disappointment not to be able to at least attempt Base Camp 3, and even have the opportunity of failing, knowing that you failed. Fail is a terrible word, but failed to reach Base Camp 3 only because you were physically unable to, or for whatever reason, but not because of a bushel of hay. I mean, come on. Anyway, it's tough to get mad here because there's no one to get mad at, except our Tibetan guide. Apparently, according to the yakmen, he already informed our guide that he only had enough hay for the yak to get us through another 2 days, and our guide never told us this. So once we meet up again with the guide in 2 days' time, he'll have some explaining to do. So definitely a day of bad omens. Definitely a day of sort of sad news. But at the end of the day, you gotta sort of look at the silver lining and think positively. We are definitely really high up, 18,500 feet. Not many people can say they've ever been this high before, ever. The views here are unbelievably fantastic. They're gorgeous. The trek up to where we are now and the trek tomorrow, I'm sure, will be tough. Will be super challenging, but at the same time will be, I'm hoping, really rewarding. As rewarding as it has been for the last few days. And we'll take it day by day. We'll take things as they come. But in the meantime, we are now cookless. Hopefully our other Sherpa, Pemba, can cook. because we still need to eat. And this is just how it goes, I guess, in reality. This is what you have to do. You have to deal with whatever unplanned circumstances come along your way. And certainly when you're in Everest region, it's not uncommon to have these kinds of surprises come up. So that's it for me for now from interim camp. Before I go, we'll do our recurring tradition of tongue twisters and just see what kind of effect the altitude is having on me. I can already say for sure, I mean, starting from day one, the altitude is definitely taking a toll on just my ability to do anything physical, like climbing out of my tent, obviously trekking, even getting dressed in my tent can leave me a little winded. So, as you can tell, even just talking into this podcast leaves me a little winded every so often, although part of that is also my cold. And I apologize if I sound nasal, but I'm just completely congested. So anyway, here we go, tongue twisters. First one. I am a mother pheasant plucker. I pluck mother pheasants. I am the best mother pheasant plucker that ever plucked a mother pheasant. I am a mother pheasant plucker. I pluck mother pheasants. I am the best mother pheasant plucker that ever plucked a mother pheasant. Oh boy. Second one. Stamfosky's little sister is a syphilitic thistle sifter. Stamfosky's little sister is a syphilitic thistle sifter. Wow. That one's starting to trip me up a little bit. Definitely, I feel myself moving more slowly, doing things more slowly. Even eating takes more time. So, I'm not surprised that these tongue twisters are finally catching up with me. Alright, third tongue twister. Blue glue gun, green glue gun, blue glue gun, green glue gun, blue glue gun, green glue gun. Wow. Alright, anyway, thanks for listening in to the Everest podcast. For more information on this trek, visit my website at everestpodcast.com. And definitely stay I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Stay tuned for the next episode tomorrow, where we'll be hiking to Base Camp 2 and hopefully a little past, and seeing how far we can get and how great of a view of Everest and how close to Everest we can get before we have to turn around and head back to to a slightly more manageable altitude. So thanks again for listening in. We'll talk soon.
For more information on Erick's Everest trek, as well as photos from his trip, please visit his website at www.everestpodcast.com.